Hello, thank you very much for coming to this talk about animation versus delivery. Do you really have to choose? What a question. First, my name is Maxime. I'm tech lead at Theodo Apps, which was named BAM.tech before.
And I'm his colleague, and I'm named Thomas, and I'm a lead developer at BAM, or Theodo Apps now.
Great. So why another animation talk? There's been a lot of very interesting talks given in the past on this subject. This is a very known subject. We put 2 talks there that were done in Flutter Europe a few years back by the Flutter team and some other and Marcin also. So this is a very covered subject. So why another one? Simply because we love animations. We really love animations. I think you all love animations. That's why you're here today. And the thing we discovered is that we love it, but we are not really using them in our apps, which is kind of odd, right? And so to understand why this is such a fact, we wanted to look at what a classic feature delivery flow looks like. Okay, so this is kind of simplified model of how we deliver value to our customers and users. The first thing is we have the product needs that comes from product people or clients if you work in companies that work with clients. Then we have some design that is done. Then we create a technical conception of it, and then we develop it. So for the purpose of this talk, we're going to assume that those tasks are done by different people. Sometimes you'll have some product owners and some designers and some developers. Sometimes in some teams it might be a product designer, but for this talk we are going to assume that these are different jobs. And so now maybe let's look at how this flow is declined for an animation.
So in our agency, we are pretty knowledgeable of the feature flow is, but we are really not really great to understand how our animation flow is going. Basically, we have multiple different animation flow. The first one, which is the fancy dev flux. So you're just writing your code, developing as always, and you're like, okay, maybe I can put some animation there. And then you put it in your code, it's in the production app, and nobody on the team knows about it. Fine, your app looks better, but nobody knows it. So a little bit more evil flux would be the Karen's flux. Why I call it that way? Because it's when you said, I'd like to speak to my designer, please. So you made the same code with the same animation, but before going into production, you will actually ask your designer, so is it looking really nicely or not? And you will iterate with him before going to production so your user can be satisfied with your animations. But this is not the perfect flux for now. The perfect flux would be the God flux. So you have a product who really loves animation. Okay, we need this animation. Then your designer is, great, I'm a motion designer, so I can make you a beautiful animation that can be done given to our techs, and then they can develop it really nicely and well. But I call it the God flux because actually, I believe it exists, really. I really believe it exists. But I still never have seen it in real life. So our goal here is to end up making this flux real. And to understand and to make the flux real, we need to understand our weak points and why we can't make it real for now. And take a look back at the basic conception flux, the feature flux. And we will start with the technical conception to the development one, because it's the one we understand the most and where we are most knowledgeable in. And when I first started developing in Flutter, one of my senior developers told me, okay, animation, really easy. You just have to, and some words I still don't understand to this day. Like really, it was really too complicated for me. And I understood that I'm not that knowledgeable into making animations. And so when we are not knowledgeable about something, we learn.
Yeah, so as any new skill you need to master, you need to engage practice mode. And so that's what we did. What we did was we created something we call the Flutter UI Dojo. Basically, it's a 45-minute weekly meeting where we invite all the people that that volunteer and want to progress on that subject, and we form some teams. We try to even the levels, the skill level in the teams, and then we. Oh yeah, so I actually switched them all, and then we choose an animation on a support like Twitter, etc., and we try to recreate it in those 4 to 5 minutes as quick as possible, and trying to discover new techniques, etc. So most of the time, the result is not quite the same of the model we used, but it's a very good way to learn very quickly when you don't have a lot of time in the week. And these are some animations we did. So as you can see, there's a lot of variations inside. You have some custom painting in the middle, some scrolling animations, some shimmer animations, etc. We try to go as broad as possible to learn as many new things as we can in the least time possible. And so hopefully we learned something while doing things, and we wanted to share that with you today. Try to be not too specific, not too broad about it. And so we are going to try to show you what we learned on some of the animations that you can do in Flutter. So we are going to reference the Flutter documentation a lot because it's actually very great on that subject. It's just that it's so huge. There's a lot of possibilities. And so we're going to look a bit like this in the next 5 minutes or so, trying to point out everything that's possible. But this will be okay, trust me. Okay, so the first animation you should know about is the implicit animations. So it's really easy to do. Basically, some of the widgets you are using in your apps today have an animated counterpart. The most known of them is the container. So basically, the code looks like this. You have an animated container on the bottom with a duration, and then you add a curve, like the easy out is a cool curve because there is like this small, like you see on the left, this small bump on the beginning, so it looks more smooth. And then you just set state with a new value, for example, a color, shape, etc. And there it is. You just have a free animation, if I can say, from one point to another. This is very great because it's really easy to do. Even someone who hasn't used a lot of Flutter and a lot of animations can do it in less than 30 minutes for the first time, and then it's kind of automatic to do it. But it's a bit limited because you have to use the animated widgets that exist out there. So there's a bunch of them, but sometimes you can't use them. And so for that, we have another tool which is called a twin. So it's kind of the twin of the animated widget because it comes with a builder which is called Twin Animation Builder. So a twin basically is a Dart class which will interpolate between two values. So for example, you give it I don't know, 0 and 20, and then a duration, and then it will compute all the values which are between those values, and then you can use it in a Twin Animation Builder to animate the value, and then you can pass the value to your widgets. For example, here you see that we use a classic circular progress indicator, but with the value property, and so we can control the animation you see on the left with the Twin Animation Builder. And this one is a bit harder because you have to understand what a twin is, but it's still pretty easy to understand and pretty easy to use. So we clearly advise you to look at this. Now let's have a look at some more complicated scenarios.
So this animation is not the one we deserve, but the one we need. It is the hero of the day. So I think a lot of Flutter developers know about hero animation, but to recap, hero animation are animation that are displayed during transition between routes. So it's pretty complicated under the hood. One of our coworkers, Guillaume, has done great articles about how it works, but it's too complicated to really go into details. And basically what you have to do to get a hero animation is just to wrap your different widgets into a hero widget and give them a tag, which should be the same as both widgets. And you can, if you want, set So here's the tag, which is called my hero, because it's obviously my hero of the day. And you can also set some properties that can change during the transition. Here we can see that the width of our button is actually changing between the transition during the routes. This could be great for accessibility, for example. So when you have a widget that doesn't move on the page, when you go to the next page, it still stays and doesn't have to move, so the users doesn't get distracted by it. So we estimated it to be a little bit more complex, because if it looks really simple, you can actually do simple heroes as the one which is on the left, or you can also do more complicated ones as the one on the right, where a lot of stuff are moving at the same time. But it's really rewarding for the users to see these kind of animations. And a more complex one, a more diverse one, is the animation controller. So let's say, example, you are a skater and you want to do some flips, but you not only want to do like front flips or back flips, you can stop in the middle of the air. Then you will need an animation controller in order to do this. The first thing to do to implement an animation controller is to actually do a stateful widget with a single ticker provider state mixing. So this will allow your widget to re-render on every tick of the clock, because animation is basically every frame that gets another render. And so you have to pass this property and give it to an animation controller with a duration you will set for your controller. At the end, don't forget to dispose your controller, otherwise you will maybe have some memory leaks, or it will make your app slower. And then you just have to add a builder, use the value of your controller to actually animate your widget. For example, here we just have a transform light rotate that animates depending on the controller value. The angle animates depending on the controller value. But here we lack something. We actually lack the control of the animation. And so we can add a button to actually handle the different status of our animation. So we can put the animation on repeat, on reverse, start it again, stop it. And so this is a little bit more complex, because you really need to understand how the ticker works, and also to actually really understand how your animation will work. But it's still possible. But how can we make it like even harder for people to use? Basically, we can combine animated controller with custom painter. So here we have a simple animation of a static screen, which take us like 1 hour to actually do the first time we did it. Now we are more trained, so it's a little faster. But we can do even more complex stuff. For example, this kind of loader that we wanted to implement. And even if it's fun, and really I had a lot of fun making it, the delivery will not really like it as much as I do. I think you should tell like, hey, I've spent like 1 day doing this loader. No, it's not really like really great for them.
Okay. So we've seen a bunch of them now. Obviously, the journey never stops. We are still learning to this day. We discover new things every day. But I think with that, what we have seen right now, we can start implementing some animations in real life scenarios. So yeah, that's great. We have reached this point. Okay. Okay. So the flux is repaired. I mean, now we just have to go see our product people and say, hey, we know how to do animation. Let's do it, right? Well, not really. So this is what your product people, our product people could answer to that. Basically, why would we do this? Because it takes time and brings no value. Okay, so this is a new kind of broken flux, which we like to call the reality checks flux. Basically, the product people saying, yeah, stop swinging around, please. And so we should not be too down about it. Let's just look at the problem and try to understand it, okay? So what is the problem in this sentence? So actually there's 2 problems in this sentence. The first one is that it takes time, and the second one is that it brings no value, okay? So for the first one, it takes time, we have seen just before that the real problem is that we don't really know how much time, okay? Because everything takes time in life, so the problem is that it's kind of blurry to the product people how much time we have to make an animation. And so this we covered in the first part of the talk. Now we kind of know which kind of animation takes how much time, so we can say to people, the product team, like, okay, for example, this animation is very easy. It's an animated container. It's like 5 minutes. Or oh, this is a custom paper. Never. We are not going to do this. The most tricky one is the brings no value. Because this is not really our expertise. We, as developer, know how to learn things on how to do technical things. We can also learn how to assert the value of something, but there are people which job is to do that, and we have asked their help. And so these are the designers. So yeah.
So the designers told us, like, you need to look back at how do you choose a feature to put in your app. So previously we use a framework which is called the minimum viable product, and it's based on 3 different pillars. The first one is the viability of your feature. So does it bring business value? The desirability, is it what the user wants, or is it part of what they want? And the feasibility of the feature, what actually can be done during this feature. And combining these 3 pillars, you can decide if whether or not this feature will be on your roadmap or not. So this is what we expected from this framework. But in reality, it's more like this. So the desirability becomes more the usability. So what is the minimum usable we can make this feature? The business viability stay the same, but we tend to have features that are a lot more delivery oriented. Like we need to put as much feature as we can in the less time possible. And so in this schema, we do not find any place for animations, and we don't want that. So we asked our different designers, and they told us, here we are making a new framework, which is called the minimum lovable or the delightful products. And it's then in basically practically the same different pillars, but with divided in 2 different parts. So we keep the business value and the feasibility of the product as a pragmatism part. And then we add the desirability and the lovability, which is another part, to the commitment part of the product. In what they are different, so the desirability is what the user really wants, and the lovability is what he will love. So nobody really wants animation or will say, okay, I want animation in the app I will use, but they will really love the animation. For example, if you took the plane to come here, maybe shame on you because it's not really ecological, but if it's the only way you can find to transport yourself here, and you have to choose between both of these planes, I think most of people will take the one on the right. Because even if you have the same feature, you can fly the same way, you have the same seats, and land the same way too, because fly is not one option, but landing is also something you need to do. You will still choose the one on the right because it is more lovable.
Okay, so to give a bit more details about that, basically, here is the theory behind this is that a good product should at least have 70% of business-related features. So this is your classic MVP features. This is the one that makes your product what it is, what is usable, etc. But you should also include at least 20% of what we call deep delight features and 10% of what we call surface delight features. So the difference between those two is that, so the deep delight features are real features that your users don't really expect, and they don't really know that they need it, but when they discover it, they love it. I don't know if you are using, for example, for me, it's for example, Notion, which is a documentation database. And so I discovered lately that in Notion you can include some mermaid.js graph. So it's a way of representing data and user flow, etc. And like basically Notion is a text-based editor. So there's really no reason why they would have that in the first place. But it's so cool to document things, etc. That now, it's what makes, I think, Notion really good as a tool right now. And there's all the products have that kind of features. The products that are well known, that this kind of deep delight features. And the surface delight features is more about like the visual aspect of the application. I think the most known example of this is Duolingo, with all their small characters, their animations everywhere, which are not really features as is, but that makes the product very cool and easy to use and yeah. And so animations in those are clearly more surface delight, but there's also some animations that you can put on the deep delight features. And I think there's an example just of it.
So since the beginning of this talk, we talk about feature versus animation. But what if we think about animation as a feature? I know it's mind-blowing. I know it's really mind-blowing. But take an example. You are on your ski resorts, and basically you want to show how your map is working. So instead of having a long tutorial for your users to how they must click on a slope to actually see the details, you can just add some animation to it. And then it will be a lot easier, so you will gain time in implementing the feature, and also the user will understand the feature a lot more easily. So we have this example with the slopes, but we also have, for example, scanning an RFID card, an NFC card, sorry, which work better if you saw how the motion works, instead of just saying, oh, you have to put the card behind your phone and etc. So
so now I think the product people in the room maybe and in your teams will agree with that. Let's say that for now. And so the flux is repaired again, right? Now we can iterate on that, but actually it's not really the flux we have right now. The one we achieved in our projects looks more like this, which is kind of variation of the fancy dev flux. It's more about the fancy designer's flux. So the designers, now they know about the MLP, the minimal viable product, and the minimal delight free product. So they know that the animation has values, but it hasn't reached the product team kind of yet. And we have a quote there about Rive. We're going to talk about it a little also. Basically, it's still a better flux than the other broken flux that we saw earlier for at least 3 reasons. The first one is that the product team is less reluctant about animations because they have the designers explaining to them using product terms why this is useful, etc. The designers, they can improve the UX with animations. They can do it with Rive. And we, developers, can also suggest animations. There's no like hard block by the product like before. It's still a little broken because most products will not ask for animation. Like it doesn't come from product needs. It's still some addition after the product needs have been discussed. And also, we only are using Rive to do this, which is an awesome tool. But we don't really use all the techniques that we learned and that we saw also today.
So we ask ourselves, why do we use Rive mostly for our animation and not other types of animation? And the first thing that comes to mind is that when a designer is making the animation on Rive, it's exactly the same it will find in the app. So he'll know exactly how it will render in the app, and there will be no mistake on all, so this doesn't look really great, so we will not put it in production. Also, you can have control over the animation. You have some controller, for example, in this animation, we can see the weather is changing. For example, if there is some snow, the designer can design the snow falling into the animation, and we can take it into our apps and actually look at a weather API, look if there's snow, and just trigger the snow animation. Also, we already made Rive animation a lot of times, and it's basically we can reuse the code, and it's really fast to do a Rive animation for developers. It takes like less than 2 hours, so we know it brings a lot of value to our application. And so, doing this, we wanted to expand our different animation types beyond Rive. And so for this, we wanted to create a new toolbox between designers and developers. So we asked designers to create different animation, not using Rive, but whatever they wanted. Then we try to make it in the dojo we presented before. give some feedback to the designers, and this is a loop we implement each week with this 45 minutes dojo. And in the end, if the animation is mature enough, then we can put it into our toolbox so they can reuse it and say when they are discussing the product needs, okay, so we know this animation exists and is fast to do, so let's make it into our products. As an example, we use the library Flutter Animate, which is really easy to use. So we made a dojo with our different coworkers and asked them to do this screen with shimmer effects and a lot of different effects, and told them, okay, so we can do it in 15 minutes. And every developer tried. Most of our senior developers didn't succeed too. And in the end, we told them, okay, use the Flutter Animate library. And every developer, even the junior ones, were able to make the screen in less than 5 minutes. So we show it to the designer, and the designer told us, oh, this is really good, but maybe we can use it on our app if it's fast and good. So, for example, we have this system of different models in our app, so we can just add a small shimmer effect to it so it looks more real than just the image. And boom, that's it. We added a new animation to our toolbox to use.
Okay, so we've come a long way during this talk. We've started with a broken flux, which is this what we saw, and now we have come to a flux that we can build on. We can expand this toolbox that we just talked about and continue to improve with our designers to go beyond and to add more and more animation to it. And that's it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, we can answer them.